I'm here. I'm here.
Saul and I have not gotten together for a while, including tonight, I would add, so far. But to be fair, here he is. Here he is. Oh, we don't hear him. Can't hear you, Saul. You were making noise before. You were. It's not just me, right, folks? Time out. Go ahead. You do what you got to do. I'll just continue. What is it? Vamping. As I was saying, we thought it would be a good time for us to catch up. It's been a while, and there's been so much going on. Now he's going to mute himself. You've all seen this kind of thing happen before. Keep in mind, Saul is an elderly man. Is there anything better than this? You get to have the facial expressions and the reactions, but you don't have to listen to him. You can just listen to me. We're seeing tonight. You want to log in, and actually, I'm going to remove you, and then I'm going to add you again. Does it help? I don't trust your microphone, Saul. Nah, you're making me look bad. I could, you're the guy. I should just keep talking. I'll just keep talking, and you'll figure it out, huh? This is yet another week in which we found that the world is prepared to distort. No, you don't hear John. You're correct. He is not. He is not on sound wise, and everything on the StreamYard side is working, so I can't do anything for him. And I heard him before he turned on his camera, which is the funny part. Not ha funny. We saw this is a week in which the world is prepared to absolutely turn itself inside out, as usual, to condemn anything the Israelis do. Israelis are indiscriminately bombing. Israelis are discriminately bombing. Israelis are targeted bombing. Whatever it is, it's the wrong thing to do. And you know why, don't you? It's because people don't like hummus. And they hold it against the state of Israel. There might be a possible other reason, I suppose.
There.
Ah.
Make it through.
All right, now maybe you can try raising the volume on your mic. Is that possible?
Okay, let me try that. I had to change mics. It was a rather interesting thing here.
You'll never change. Let's not kid ourselves.
No.
Okay. So you're on board now? You're with us?
I think so.
Oh, now that's too loud.
No, what do you mean too loud? I didn't change anything.
Okay. Well, maybe because you were screaming.
I think we have been infiltrated by Hamas holes.
I know that I haven't had a beeper in quite
with my audio.
Well, everyone has to go back to, landlines now, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, those can explode too.
Yes, the number of famous scenes, including in the Munich movie.
Yes, I'm frankly, I'm expecting for the toilets or the bidets. That would be a fantastic day.
It is. It is pretty. I mean, people who are able to extract themselves from their hatred of the Jews have been astonished at the operational planning and success, execution, everything of this beeper event. But this is the kind of thing that you probably, when you were with the CIA, used to pull off all the time, right?
Yeah. Apparently, I was in the CIA. I just found out today from some of the people answering to your call
Right.
of duty,
It's
and
very
yeah,
interesting.
and frankly, I would like to take this opportunity to tell the CIA, send me the freaking checks.
I know.
If
I
I
was
ever
actually
work
going to
for
say,
you, at least I want to collect.
right? I'm completely sympathetic.
Yes. It's like, now it turns I was in the CIA. I'm working for free. What a schmuck.
And that just goes to prove that what they say about the Jews is not true. Obviously, we're not such good businessmen.
Evidently. I was cracking up looking at those comments over there and blocking people away because I have, this unbreakable rule. Anybody with an IQ under 60 cannot follow me. Eh, and I maintain it. I don't want him near me. I don't know if it is contagious, and I just don't want him around. Now, I was seeing a stat today that the average IQ in the US is about 80.
80.
Yeah, now think about that for a
That's not,
second.
yeah, that's not high.
That means that half the population are, can I say the word? We're in YouTube. I don't know if I can say the word, but let's say that they have slow development.
They're flame retardant.
Yes. I mean, how scary is that?
My question is that figure the same as it was 30 years ago?
I wouldn't know. I just saw the status of today. I don't particularly care about these IQ stats anyway, to be frank. My own personal observation is that it's more like 70% that are way behind the ball. But
Based on, but you can't go on Twitter. I mean, you see some unusually stupid things. You know, the question I think often is: are people pretending to be stupid, or are they as stupid as they seem? And I think the answer is you get both.
no, I think for the most part they are.
They are that stupid.
Yeah.
I mean,
sometimes even more. Sometimes they actually seem more intelligent than they are.
But then so sometimes though you'll see people who are intellectually have intellectual achievements who will say, well, this was terrorism, or this October 7th was justified because they had a music festival next to a concentration camp.
Oh yeah, lovely. I love that one.
These are people with advanced degrees, and I don't mean in women's studies. I mean people who can really add up a column of numbers and operate a slide rule. You don't think so much?
No. I think what was it, David Flynn, who called them intellectual morons?
Who was it?
I think it was David Flynn.
David Flynn.
Yes, no relationship to the general. And he called them intellectual morons and made a very compelling case about 15 years ago. And I think he was right, just because somebody receives basic instruction doesn't mean they are intelligent. Just because somebody keeps a chair warm at Harvard or Princeton, I was going to say Rutgers, but it doesn't matter whether they keep the chair warm there or not. They're all stupid. Eh, sorry, I know it's your state, but hey, um,
I didn't go to Rutgers.
good. That's why we're talking. Because I haven't found a single graduate from Rutgers who would be willing to sit with me for more than 2 seconds. But
Well,
the thing is,
there are some very distinguished people. Come on, you can't generalize that much.
well, the exception doesn't make the rule. Just I cannot generalize from the particular, nor particularize from the general. Just because somebody went to Harvard doesn't mean anything, and just because there is one intelligent graduate in Harvard doesn't mean anything either. Uh,
Well,
my
I mean, that if that was ever true, it's never been more true.
and the thing is, you can take these people and teach them a few tricks, how to write a thesis, uh, which is mechanically not that difficult. You can teach a 10-year-old how to do it. You can teach them how to read a statistic. Most of them can't anyway, those who teach and those who learn. And the end result is intellectual morons, people who think they know something, like those doctors in medicine who buy books by the yard to decorate the living room and have never picked one if their life depended on it. And there are people who never went to school who are some of the geniuses this country's produced.
Okay, I mean, I think we can agree that degrees and credentials. People often make the mistake of using the word education to describe to describe the attainment of credentials.
Right.
That is definitely
merely instruction. You can teach a chimp to use a tool, and that chimp will use the tool, but he won't be any engineer.
Well, yeah, actually, yes, and chimps turn out to be actually pretty good at tool using.
Yes.
And speaking of tool using, I want to get back to the Israelis. Corinne, thank you for your super chat. My husband served 2 years in Iraq, 1 year in Afghanistan. After being hit up by IEDs, I hope he's okay. Obviously, he is, because he was able to not only come back to you, but to find the attacks in Lebanon to
That's
be
justice. Yes,
justice. Your husband, and it's interesting too, because a lot of people think that people, there's this awful accusation, which is quite unjustified, that the Israelis want the Americans to fight their wars for them. Notwithstanding the fact that there's never been such a request, and that the Israelis seem to be rather good at it themselves.
I was going to say they don't need the help, and not only has there never been such a request. If anything, they want to have their hands untied. They don't want the U.S. to fight their wars. They want the U.S. not to stop them.
All right. I mean, listen. I think that's that's right. But I think we can do better than this. I think we need to get into something more insightful than this, because now we just sound like a couple of old men getting the paper at the newsstand. I mean, this is
work vetting. But let's go into that, because you are guiding me in the right direction, I think, with all the comments of people who call Israel's just by any measure action against Hezbollah in the last 3 days terrorism. Well, it isn't. You don't even know the definition of terrorism. Don't bother me.
Well, they obviously don't care about terrorism because they're offended by people attacking terrorists or responding to terrorism. I
Right.
mean, again, this is come on. This is please you continue. I'm sure you're going to go somewhere that's going to
I
be
have
more,
I have
more
no idea.
insightful.
Let me know when I get there. But no,
Okay.
but the thing is, it and of course we can say the same pride things. Uh, People don't complain. Uh, in the past, since Israel left Gaza, how many thousands of rockets have been fired on Israel from Gaza?
Well, from he just from Hezbollah, right?
No, no, just from
All
Gaza.
around. I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm
those,
not.
those
I'm
are
not the kind of guy who who keeps
it's
those.
over 50,000.
Is that the answer? Really?
Yes, way over 50,000. Add another 50, 60,000 from Lebanon, loved by uh, Hezbollah, who was supposed to retreat north of the Litani River as part of the agreement by means of which Israel retreated to its borders. They haven't. They've been in violation of that agreement from day one, and they've been lobbing rockets and missiles at Israel, 8,000 in the past 11 months alone. And it has cost the uh, internal displacement of over 100,000 Israelis. And by the way, Israelis, not Jews, Israelis. Among the displaced people are Jews, Christians, atheists, Muslims. Uh, Another trick that these people play all the time is to depict Israel as the Jews. Israel is a far more open society. There are 2 million Muslim Israelis who are represented in the Knesset, in the Supreme Court, in government, in the police, in the IDF, in the Mossad. There's over 1 million Christians. Likewise, we never speak of them. They want to turn this into some kind of religious confrontation. It isn't. It is a confrontation between civilization and barbarism.
That's right.
There are you want some of the idiots on the left. I'm sorry, I'm redundant again. Uh, some of the leftards in this country claim that what they want is a country in Palestine where everybody, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, can live together in harmony and sing kumbaya and stupid Coca Cola songs. Well, it actually exists. There is one country in the Middle East where all religions and non religion can live together in relative harmony insofar as uh, 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 civilization allows, and that is Israel. The
How
rest
many
is bullcrap.
how many times have you been to Israel?
None. I mean, I went through Ben Gurion Airport a couple of times. Um, I have distant family there that I've always meant to visit, and the invitation never comes.
Is that it? Is that your excuse?
Well, I'm not a man of abundant means. I
You
used to,
sh- you should find a way to get there, though. I mean,
yeah. Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
desperate.
I'm not the Israeli Travel Bureau. I mean,
No,
that's not
I would
my.
I would
I
like to
haven't
take
been
this
there in 10 years.
opportunity. I would like to take this opportunity to plead with our viewers. Please send me to Israel. Eh,
But you want to also come back, right? Because that's two different pitches.
well, it's not Naples.
You were in Naples this
Oh,
year, right?
well, a gazillion times, but unfortunately it didn't work because the Italians say vedere Napoli e poi morire. After you see Naples, you can die. But it hasn't happened yet. With Israel, I hope it won't either. So, yes, I want to go to Israel and come back. Uh, Somebody has People have asked me to migrate to Israel, and it's tough. You should consider coming home. I said, well, I have a problem with that. I am home.
You feel like you're home where you live now in America.
Yes, yes, and I do feel, and I know it sounds straight, but it is heartfelt. There is no better place in the world, and it is the last glimmer of hope for humanity. There is no other place on the planet where a social experiment like America of self-government of these proportions is taking place. Not one. And I love being a part of it, warts and all.
What is it that you think that makes America more more ideal as an experiment in self-government than the next best? What will be the next best? Canada doesn't count. That's just a state.
Canada's they're a joke. Um, maybe to a certain degree, Great Britain, but the problem is
Great
America
Britain is
has no
history.
peers. America has no peers. It never did. Our founding fathers created a form of government that the rest of the world is still trying to understand, much less emulate. You just said Great Britain is gone. Uh, People seem to be upset because the government is assaulting freedom of speech in Great Britain. Oh, yeah? And when did they have it?
Well, you don't think I think they didn't have they don't have a First Amendment, but
No.
many great and subversive works of literature and challenging works of literature and art have come out of Great Britain.
Well, some have come out of the Soviet Russia.
That's true, but that was
Archipelago Gulag,
some is
for
not.
instance. Even the most, when you go by specific works of art, even the most vicious dictatorships and satrapies have managed to produce great poets or writers, uh, because there's always somebody who's challenging the status quo. But my point is, when I was a kid and I went to London for the first time, I was marveled at Hyde Park Corner. Remember that?
Yes,
That was the one spot in the entirety of Great Britain where somebody could speak without censorship and not suffer incarceration, provided that he was standing on a box, so that he was not touching sovereign British ground.
was that what the purpose of the box was?
Yes,
I was.
they were not touching sovereign ground. Now, why was that a practice? Because everywhere else, outside that box in Hyde Park Corner, anything you said could, and generally was, used against you. In Europe, there's hardly a country without legislation against some form of speech. And I'm not talking about an incitation to violence, which is illegal even here, or uh,
No, you just mean
disparaging
subversive,
somebody's character.
subversive talk.
I'm loving the pictures you're putting there. Who do you have working with you that has all of these things on hand? Because
Just me
you
and
didn't know I was going to talk about this.
yes, but I'm quick. I'm quick.
Oh, God, a fast Jew. You're a dangerous man. So there is no freedom of speech in Europe, let alone in the satrapies of South America or Africa, or communist China, Korea, both of them. There's no conception of it. And when you try to explain to people, they look at you as if you were describing life in a planet outside the solar system. Same thing with the Second Amendment. They have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Never mind that the principles upon which the Second Amendment exists were, let's say, posited by Cesare Beccaria in Italy, in the Papal States, for crying out loud, in the 1760s, when he was advocating for armed citizenry as a means of reducing crime, for instance. And Jefferson specifically quotes Beccaria as the source of this epiphany.
What's his name?
Cesare, Cesare, Beccaria, B as in boy, Ecca,
Oh, Cesare
Beccaria.
Beccaria.
And he published a tract, I think it was 1763, give or take a year, Del delitto e delle penne. It has nothing to do with penne, it's a different thing. Now, del delitto e delle penne, of crime and punishments. Now, these fine gentlemen who have to contend with one of the most oppressive governments in the history of mankind came up with some of the most amazing concepts of a free society and what would make it so, and served as inspiration to Jefferson and others for the defense of the Second Amendment, which is, it goes far beyond this limited idea that some posit of defense against an oppressive government. It is first and foremost defense against criminals. When you live in a vast territory where police, I mean, you can, in some parts of this country, you can ride 20 miles, 30 miles without seeing a cop and more. If you happen to be there when a Hezbollah type comes close to you, wouldn't you like to be prepared for your defense?
I would.
Well, that's the whole idea. Oh, you have another quote from him. Torture is cruel and barbaric. Everybody was having their nuts squeezed around him.
1764 was when he wrote Crime and Punishments.
Oh, okay, I was off by a year. Damn
That's
it.
okay. But the amazing thing is that, as you're saying, this is right in the zone. This is right before the American Revolution.
That's right before the American Revolution. And by the way, if you read it, and I know you will, because I'm beginning to know you, you're going to find out that the argument over the Second Amendment was settled, done with, in 1764. After that, we're just engaging in intellectual masturbation.
Okay.
Yeah, no, there is no rational argument that can counter Beccaria.
No, there isn't. I mean, as a student of the Talmud, I can tell you that these concepts in criminal law are familiar to people who know Jewish law. You're not even allowed to testify under Jewish law. You're not allowed to testify against yourself in a capital case, even if you want to. I mean, you can't. Your confession is considered to be invalid because you are a relative of yourself.
You cannot commit suicide by court.
That's right. In any event, I got to tell you, I am ashamed that I never heard of Cesare Beccaria before.
Don't worry. That's why I call myself the largest human repository of useless information.
Well, but this might not be so useless.
No.
This might even be useful.
It's very useful, and some of his arguments, a society that forbids its citizens to carry weapons only permits criminals to do so with impunity.
That's right. That's right.
If
That's where we are now.
Right. Precisely. That's where we are in Chicago, in New York. And he argues that, of course, a criminal who is about to commit one of the a heinous crime, who's ready for murder, is not going to stop because a piece of paper says he cannot have a gun, will he?
Well, I always like when I drive into a neighborhood and the sign says this is a gun-free zone.
Yeah. A drug-free zone, a gun-free zone. Yeah,
Gun,
sure.
yeah,
And we put this
it's
out
an
and we're
insult to
finding
your intelligence.
this is idealism carried into the mental facility stage. Just if I close my eyes, you're not there. Eh, when I see the signs, gun-free zone, drug-free zone, all I can think of is uh, Chauncey Gardner.
Right.
You know, these people are trying to change the channel.
But
And
why that metaphor? Why Chauncey Gardner of all people?
well, Chauncey Gardner, remember when he leaves his isolation, uh, uh, when his patron dies,
Oh,
uh,
right.
and is walking around the neighborhood, that things get pretty dicey, and there is this bunch of very nasty gangsters that seem on the verge of attacking him. He pulls the TV remote and tries to change the channel. Because throughout his life of isolation, with only a TV to show him the world, whenever he saw something that was disagreeable, he would just change the channel. In real life, you can't. In real life, you cannot say, oh, there are no guns here when there are. So that's what I see society as Chauncey, denying reality and making every effort to continue to live in his own fantasy. No, we're getting deep here. It's
There we are. There he is, watching himself on TV. This is more or less as we are doing now. Hey, no
yeah,
smooching, no smooching on my live. He doesn't know what to
that
do.
that
He's
movie was
it was actually an extraordinary movie, and it's a and Peter Sellers was a very very talented man who was evidently a real jerk. People on other film, I mean, he was notoriously difficult to work with on a number of other films, and really, not a beloved person. But boy, being there, that was some picture. 1979.
yep, yep. I remember the first time I watched that movie was in 1980, soon after I arrived in New York from the Gulag.
See, Paul points out that as you are, you can't just change the channel and make the make the savages all of a sudden
Disappear.
disappear or not be savages.
And, unless you twitch their beepers. I'm
Oh,
sorry, but I'm still giddy about this.
well, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I'll test your patience.
I'm in till 10:30, regardless of how
Okay.
much patience I have.
Okay. When I left the Gulag of Buenos Aires and I ended up in Brazil for a while, because I couldn't get travel documents or anything given my particular predicament at the time. And I ended up in the Amazon. And I collected some information living with the Carajá Indians. The Paje, kind of like the witch doctor of the tribe, is also the storyteller. And he told me, and I took notes. And my very first published article ever was the story of the creation of the world according to the Carajá Indians. Kanansiwe Konrehatebodekre. The creator was not born, he's always been. That's how it starts. And you go like this, and if I ever over a couple of bottles of good wine. I'll tell you the whole story. You're going to crack up because it's a very magical version of Genesis. With
But I mean,
magical,
you're certainly starting out on the right foot. I mean, we say that God has no beginning and no end, of course.
well, that's exactly what they say in their language. And of course, in the beginning, God created the earth, and the earth was void. And then God wanted to see what the hell he was doing, so he created light. So far, so good with the Karajan.
Okay.
But I'm not going to tell you the whole story. Like I said, we did a couple of bottles of
Okay.
wine and need to be in
All
the mood.
right.
But one of the most beautiful images is
But I can tell you, it does not have a happy ending.
no, the Karajais are still there telling the story to each other. And at night, it was completely dark and nobody could see anything. So God decided to provide stars in the firmament so that there would be a minimum of light. And not knowing where to get them from, there was a bird going around with beautiful, colorful plumage in its neck. So God took those feathers and threw them over the skies, and that became the starry sky. The bird, of course, ended up with a bald neck, and that is what we now know as vultures, who donated their colorful neck plumage so that we can have stars tonight. Well,
Okay.
yes, I was thinking how stories go round and round
How did you
because
get?
3 days ago,
You wanted to leave Argentina, so you ended up in
I had
Brazil. You had to. Okay.
I had
Okay.
to run with the clothing on my back and $20.
So the best you could do at the moment was Brazil.
Yes,
How did you end up?
Uruguay was not safe.
What was not safe? Uruguay was not safe. Okay. But how did you end up with the Carajá?
Well, because I had an encounter with the DOPS, or the military police in Bahia, that convinced me that the farther away from any civilized hamlet I could get, the better. I was arrested and released and warned that I was being observed, and if I did anything untoward, there were people in Buenos Aires waiting for me. So I said, okay, and I started walking towards the Amazon. That's the short version. Otherwise, we're going to be here 3 days.
Okay, that's pretty good.
But that's the thing. And I ended up doing this thing. And God, I did stuff that you find on in adventure movies. I traveled the Amazon River by rowboat.
Well, you were a younger man then, of course.
Oh, yeah. No, don't ask me to do it now. Now, there is no 5-star hotel and at least a 3-star restaurant. Let somebody else go.
That's for the young people.
Yes, I'm done with that stuff. People tell me, but have you ever been here? No, and I never will. Why? Because I'm done exploring. But in any case, the thing is that the stars in the sky were the result of God throwing up on the sky the feathers of the vulture. We now have several new constellations in the sky. They're made up of the nuts of his phalanx.
That was the whole purpose of this.
The whole purpose of the introduction was because think when you look at the sky today, think that many of these bright lights over there are the tiny gnats of terrorists that were propelled into the heavens by the just arm of justice and left the rest of them singing soprano. I wonder if they all fit in the Sistine Chapel to have a castrati chorus.
Well, this is, I mean, a lot of people have observed that these attacks were really, really acute, really effective on many, many levels. And one of them is the attack on the manhood.
Oh God, it's beautiful on so many levels.
But also, the these guys thought that they would outsmart the Israelis. And let's face it, let's not be deluded. They have outsmarted the Israelis in the past. I mean,
Yes,
October 7th was a series of workarounds to Israeli assumptions about
yes,
how Palestinian terrorists would operate. But these guys, once the Israelis, I said something on X, I guess it was yesterday, which was that we saw in the first generation of the state of Israel that Arabs were utterly unable to match Israel in conventional warfare. And in the second generation of Israel, the Arabs really got the better of Israel in unconventional warfare. And unconventional warfare is of course asymmetrical, and involves, instead of direct military confrontation, terrorism and political operations, which have been extremely effective. Israel has never been more isolated, and it has never been more. The PR has never been worse for Israel than it is now. That's for sure. Having said that, it does appear that the Israelis have recognizing that they're never going to be able to compete on that score with the Palestinians, because the Palestinians have so many advantages.
they can't. They can't.
But what they can compete on is technology and intelligence.
What if I told you that this is not so much technology as intelligence? And by the way, what you were just describing, I write at length in Gander, the origins of this asymmetrical warfare. And there is a warning there. I consider it a warning. It was actually the epilogue of the life story, the autobiography of Otto Skorzeny, before he croaked in Spain, where he warns of a new soldier for the fatherland that will mix with the citizens of any city and cause harm before they even know it's there. And he's describing the modern terrorist. And he, together with Billy Brenner and others, trained the first of this type in Cairo in the 1950s. Gamal Abdel Nasser, a Nazi who called himself the Rais, which in Arabic means der Führer, just in case people don't know, whose brother translated Mein Kampf into Arabic, and it became the bestseller. And a bestseller to a degree that Hitler, for a brief while, replaced Mohammed as the number one name for boys. Isn't that interesting?
It's interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. At one point,
wouldn't you expect to meet a lot of people like our age and older named Hitler if that were the case?
well, I know a Mussolini and two Hitlers.
You know how?
And,
yeah. Well, so what? I'm followed on X by about 37 Elon Musks. Okay, yes. So you can't,
Well, Mussolini Tantawi was the brother of Hitler. Tantawi was the commander of operations of the Egyptian army under Sadat. Sadat wrote a letter to an imaginary Hitler in the 1950s. A magazine asked him to write a letter to Hitler. What would you say to Hitler if he was here? And he was telling him how, you didn't finish your work. I wish you were here, kind of stuff. Okay? These are Nazis. And the Fedayeen, the first time that Fedayeen was used in modern times, were the unit created by Nasser to attack Israel within its borders. And they recruited youth from the Cairo University and the Muslim Brotherhood, including Yasser Arafat, an Egyptian who was studying engineering, lieutenant in the Egyptian army who was studying engineering, and trained them and sent them over to Israel to create trouble. And their minions are still doing it.
But you don't what? So why don't you hear that term anymore?
Which one?
Fedayeen. I don't think too many people much younger than we.
No, well, remember there were other Fedayeen, the Fedayeen Saddam in Iraq at one point. I think that the name created for itself a bad reputation. Nobody wants to be called Fedayeen. But the old Fedayeen are the PLO, are Fatah.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we're going to be discussing in a year or two, because after Hamastan is done and Hezbollah is sent blinded back to Iran, we're going to have to deal with Fatastan. I have no doubt about it.
I think you're probably right. They're a big problem.
They are a bigger problem than people realize. And everybody talks about Abu Mazen as if he were the president of the Palestinian Authority. He's a terrorist. He's a terrorist involved in terrorism from the Munich massacre onwards. There's always his fingerprints.
Staccato Doctor, DDS.
Oh, look at that. You have a new member. Great.
Yes. Thanks so much for joining, Dr. Staccato. I appreciate it. And yes. I will floss tonight in your honor. But that's interesting, though, that the Soviets are associated with the training of the Fedayeen.
They do.
Because it's so contrary to Soviet military doctrine. The independent, loosely formed.
It's anathema to Soviet doctrine. The Soviets, look at that. The Balkans, Hitler used Muslim Bosnians. That is the Handschar Brigade. The Handschar Brigade was commanded by Sturmbannführer Amin al-Husseini, also known as Haj Amin al-Husseini, who was the spiritual leader of Johann Hans von Leers, who changed the name to Omar Amin von Leers after his conversion, who was one of the organizers of the Fedayeen and who was instrumental in bringing SS officers. There were up to 3,500 SS officers living in the Mahdi district of Cairo. And when you say the Soviets, yes, the Soviets also collaborated with them, but they came in later.
Oh, yeah, there were a lot of Germans there.
Yes.
There were a lot of Germans who gave a lot of really bad military advice to the Egyptians.
Well, no, the Russians gave bad military advice. We're still paying for the advice the Germans gave them.
Who's still paying?
Everybody.
You mean
from Israel to New York?
You're saying that because of the advice that the Germans gave the Egyptians?
One of the founders of Al-Qaeda was Ayman al-Zawahiri. Ayman al-Zawahiri was trained by Otto Skorzeny. And thousands of people paid for that around the world. So, yeah, we're still paying the price. We're still ignoring the fact that what von Leers called a wave of green flags from Morocco to Baghdad, fighting against colonialism, imperialism, and for social justice is the last hope for our fatherland. It still is.
Social justice.
Oh,
But
yeah, the social justice, don't get me started on social justice because you're going to see
these
that
are they're commies, folks. They're commies.
it's worse. It's worse. It's not just the commies, but you are a lover of the law, or by now you'll be doing something else.
Let's
I,
let's take that. Okay, let's work with that.
I do believe that any qualifier attached to justice denies it.
Well put.
Mhm. I don't like qualifiers. Social justice, racial justice, give me a break. None of them represent any idea of justice. They're actually big fat thumbs on the scales of a lady justice who's being raped in the process. Social justice is government racketeering.
Government racketeering. Well,
Yeah.
well, it is sort of a it's a kind of demagoguery
On steroids. On steroids. And the first time you're going to find it in official documents is in Mussolini's fascism, who sets as one of the objectives of the fascist state the establishment of social justice.
Guess what? In the Torah, it says there's a prohibition against favoritism toward the poor in court.
Yep.
The destitute you shall not favor in his complaint.
Yeah. Now, since you have fast fingers, contrast that to the preferential option for the poor.
The what option?
Preferential option for the poor. And we're going to go from the Torah to Bergoglio.
Ah, your favorite topic.
Oh, no. I have to wash my mouth after this. I have to floss after I mention his name. Little bits of crap get in between the teeth. The preferential option for the poor is the means by which a band of very, very bad people want to convince us that being poor is the best we can hope for.
The option for the poor referred especially to a trend throughout biblical texts where there is, they believe, a demonstrable preference given to powerless individuals who live on the margins of society.
Oh, bullcrap.
The option
that is the basis, by the way, for liberation theology and all that crap.
That's right. That is exactly what it is.
But it's not just liberation theology. There's a message there. Otto Scorsese, who also worked for the CIA after Egypt, was an evil man. Yes, he was an evil man. By the way, he didn't actually work for the CIA. That is something that you need to study a little bit more.
Listen, you have to listen to Saul because Saul is a former CIA asset.
Yeah, apparently I am.
As we established earlier today.
People who are working for the CIA, in whatever circumstance it might be, good, bad, in the middle, I don't care, will have, and the same thing goes for law enforcement, will have to deal with some of the most undesirable characters in this world. If you want information about what a drug cartel is doing, who are you going to pay to get that information? The Bishop of Cologne? The president of La Sorbonne? No, you're going to pay some asshat who's up to his neck in the criminal organization and who's probably the worst of them, because he doesn't have any qualms selling his comrades in arms to you. Yes, at one point, it is true, the CIA, in its fight against Soviet communism, did pay this cretin to have some information. That doesn't mean that he was working for the CIA. And, an asset to fight communism in South America. In South America, Otto Skorzeny was, how shall I put this elegantly? Buffing the hiney of Eva Perón.
I get it.
He was the chief of her security guard and used to roll in the hay with her whenever the chance came. And this was told to me by the then Minister of Justice, who was a very personal friend of both Eva and Juan, and who clearly remembered the affair of Eva with Skorzeny. Skorzeny worked for himself. And he served every master from Perón. And when Perón was deposed, he went over to work with Nasser. And occasionally he would throw a bone to the CIA in exchange for a check. But it was his organization, and I can give you a hell of a lot more names in that one. It was his organization, it was his plan, and it was his plan to advance, the lofty ideals of National Socialism, which seem to have infected the Democratic Party of late. We're going to have a lot more of this conspiracy stuff, but don't worry.
It is really something. From you or from everyone else?
From everyone else. I maintain that if there is a conspiracy, we're talking about a confederacy of dunces.
Well, so I'll let Hunch have a final word on that.
And by the way, this guy says, just to show how shitty the Dulles brothers were, yes, they were, no question about it. And they weren't even the shittiest. Take a look at J. Edgar Hoover.
Oh, and to this day, the State Department is not on our side.
No.
Certainly not on Ron and Saul's side.
No. I can tell you, one half of the State Department are a bunch of ignoramuses who couldn't find their ass with a flashlight and a GPS locator. And the other half are Gramscian communists. And there is a sprinkle of, self-serving cretins. Like, you know that the ambassador to Argentina from the US used to be Raul Castro?
No.
What a name. His name was Raul Castro.
But not the same one.
No, obviously not the same one, but it doesn't matter because it's the same shit. Raul Castro wasn't really an ideologue, but he was in business for himself. And he carried out businesses with the Argentine military during the repression that led even to the torture of American diplomatic personnel, because anybody who wanted to send information to DC unadulterated by Castro was taking his life in his hands. Interesting.
No, you didn't delay it. No, I just wanted Hunch not to worry about it. No, right. Not Fidel Jr., you mean?
Fidel Jr., yeah. What I don't know what Canada did that was so serious for God to send them Trudeau.
They clearly brought it down on themselves. They've had many opportunities. And this is what happens, and this is exactly what happened with California.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they elect these terrible people, and they're given multiple opportunities to get rid of them, and they won't do it.
And they don't. With California, somebody mentioned something that got me thinking. I'm not saying this is what happened, but I am now thinking and looking into this. But California definitely took a turn to the outhouse just at about the time of the amnesty of '86.
Well, I have the impression the living was pretty good in California for quite a while after that.
Oh,
But
yeah, no, I said took a turn. It's not instantaneous. But that's when Democrats started winning every single election. They went from a competitive, politically competitive state to a virtual hereditary monarchy.
California or the United States?
California.
I mean, you had the two Brown brothers, the two Brown guys. Look, these. One of my platforms, one of my electoral platforms. I'm never running for anything, but I believe that there should never be, notwithstanding John Quincy Adams, we should never have two consecutive generations elected to the same office.
I agree.
Or arguably any high public office.
I agree.
If you spent an entire lifetime at the public trough, at least spend a generation not working for government before your family gets back into the game.
Yeah, but you see, when you say John Quincy Adams, I also have no problem with Cousin Adams. But it was a different presidency as well.
Sure. It was a different guy. The entire concept of national government was different then.
Exactly. So with his concept of national government, when a presidency limited to the powers granted in the Constitution and no more, which would involve the elimination of just about every agency and better than half the departments. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind because the opportunity for patronage would be very limited.
Yeah, this is something a lot of people don't understand, that there's an inherent evil in the expansion of government, not merely because it costs money, not merely because you lose choice, because every new job, every new program, every new initiative is an opportunity to entrench,
Graft and dependency.
graft, depend, and grow the next tranche of new programs.
Yes.
And it is so out of control now. And we've reached a point where we no longer pass budgets.
No, why?
There's no accounting whatsoever.
Nobody can count that high anyway. you know, yeah, no, it is, and it is a destructive illness. It is an illness that is undone many an empire, and it's got us against the wall right now. There's not too much margin if this continues.
But you know what the problem is, Saul? There's just enough margin for it to continue for a very, very long time.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, there's so much wealth in the system.
Yes.
Which is how we got to the point where the corporate world and the academic world and the professions are able to rationalize the acceptance and promotion of so much mediocrity. because the thinking is there are enough of us here who do know what we're doing that we can afford to take on dead weight. We can, because it's the socially right thing to do, and all people are inherently equal. So eventually, either they or their children will be our colleagues. And by the way, there are people of the highest quality doing and the highest ability from every race. But when
Yes.
you accept mediocrity, incompetence, because you believe you have enough abundance, whether it's abundance of resources, land, talent, credibility, all the things that are going to hell, you run out of it. You run out of it and you don't even know what hit you. So that we've reached a point. I mean, look what's going back on the campuses now. They don't know how to stop these animals from
Oh,
disturbing.
I can stop it in 5 seconds. Give me the power to do so, and I'll
Yeah, right.
stop it in 3 hours.
You would.
There,
I know you wouldn't, and I
there
think I
should
could
be
too.
there should be no tolerance for illegal behavior.
But there
Period.
is endless.
If you come in, you do what these guys are doing. In my case, number one, they're expelled from the university. I see them on the ground, they're expelled without any possibility of appeal. It's a private or public organization with its rules.
Right,
You
but
violated the campus rules,
they
you're out
don't
of
they
goodbye.
don't do. They just hired a new president of Colombia. She apologized to everyone who was arrested.
Yeah, can you imagine that? I
They
would
don't want.
fire her on the spot. When she finishes that sentence, she's fired. There was a time when a student would be expelled for plagiarizing, for copying somebody's test, for plagiarizing
A
in
paper.
his thesis.
Yeah,
Uh, they would be instantly expelled, and very few and far between were able to appeal, because if they plagiarize goodbye.
I
Since
remember.
when?
I
Since when
remember
did? Yeah, when you went to school, when I went
when
to
I was in
school.
school. I mean, there are guys who just disappeared. They were or they were kicked out for a year, or
Yeah, depending on
suspected.
the gravity of the
But the
circumstances,
point is, it was a really, really big deal.
Yes.
Now they
And
become the
even if it was
presidents
an
of.
inadvertent error, I forgot to put the quotation marks. Okay, in that case, you
Yeah,
get a
that's
simple
right.
suspension.
That's right.
Eh? But today, not only the students, the faculty are a bunch of plagiarizing asshats who couldn't write a page if their life depended on it.
Okay, and we sound like a couple of old men complaining about everything's going to hell and everything was better, and that's true. But it's always been true. It's always been
Yeah.
true.
By the way, it wasn't always better. We were just speaking about the time I had to start my life of adventure. No, it wasn't better. It was considerably worse now. Eh, so I'm not of those, and I am an optimist, and I think we go in a sinusoidal wave from excellence to deep shit back to excellence, and including this confrontation that we have in this country. Uh, the names change. The internationalist of yesterday is the globalist of today. Uh, assholes are fairly eternal. They're always assholes. That's fine. But this dichotomy between a strong central government and this sacrifice of individual freedoms in the altar of the American Gestalt versus the emphasis on individual freedoms and the dispersion of the power of the state is a discussion that John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were having way over 200 years ago. So, will any of the parts ever win? No, we're going to be pushing and pulling, a tug of war between individual freedom and collective welfare that is going to go back and forth as it has been going back and forth since the days of the Articles of Confederation. So it, I'm not worried about it. I may not like it when in my time the freaking collectivists seem to have the upper hand. But I don't mean that we're going to shit because of it. The pendulum will swing.
But
What we
again,
have to, yeah,
the reason I'm concerned though is because we are so insulated by wealth
yeah,
because we can meet our material needs. We have the technological ability now. Think
yes,
about think about
and
textiles.
and it's getting better. It, you know the people that say that the U.S. is going the way of Venezuela.
I've never heard anyone say that.
People say we're gonna be another Venezuela if we don't stop this. No, we're not.
No.
For the very reason that you are underscoring just now. This country is so wealthy. I don't think people can grasp the notion of how wealthy America is. Even when we try to compare it with other countries, there is no comparison. There is no country that can compare to America in terms of wealth. Oh, but China is going to surpass us. Yeah, sure. When Trump,
China is about to crumple like an aluminum can. Their economy is
and their economy, whatever's left of it, is dependent entirely on trade with the US. So China is a nothing. And no, it's not going to surpass the US, and it's not going to survive, and probably it's not going to be a single country 20 years from now. Maybe five. There are centrifugal forces at play in China that one more crisis and they may break. Now we are at the rebirth of the Weimar Germany. In your dreams, we're not in the rehash of Weimar, for crying out loud. Number one, this country is wealthier than 1,000 Germanys at the time. Second, we're not constrained by reserves to our currency. We have a pure currency. We can print as much of it as we freaking want to because we need no parallel increase of our reserves to maintain the value of money because the value of our money is farts and dreams.
I'm not sure that makes the point as strong as you want it to be.
Let me put it this way. The biggest con ever was the US eliminating reserves.
Going off the gold standard.
No, the gold standard, the gold or any other standard.
You mean even the silver? Yeah, okay.
Right, because we made it non-convertible in the freaking 30s. And then in 1971, 72, I don't remember now, but thereabouts, we eliminated the reserves. Now the dollar is worth $1 and is backed by the same dollar.
Dollar is always going to be worth $1.
Take it or leave it. And well, but what are our reserves? Nothing. A euro has to have dollars in reserve. Dollars, gold, but dollars. Nearly every currency in the world has dollars as a component of their backing. So our hot air and farts is the reserve value of every other currency in the world. What happens if the dollar goes to zero? Well, let me see. The Brazilian currency collapses, the euro collapses. There is no currency left in the world.
Let me make another really important point because what I think Hunch is getting at is the cultural decline and the political decline. And those are legitimate things to worry about because the trends are in a direction of decline. and in a direction of truly true wretchedness, the kind of that Weimar Germany kind of scenario. But the reason there are some really important reasons why this is different. First of all, remember, in terms of cultural decline, we're there, but Weimar was coming out of defeat in World War One. We do have a similar problem of nihilism here.
Yes.
But once you get away from social media, get into the heartland of this country,
It's not
remember,
there.
the Germany of Weimar, that was in Weimar, that was in Berlin, but it was not throughout the whole country. That is true. We have the problem in Washington. Yep. Not quite the same kind of cultural decline as we have in Los Angeles and New York. But yes, but there is still a fundamental cultural superiority that we have over what Germany was in 1918. And
Absolutely.
A social cohesiveness. Remember, they had not been a single country for more than a generation.
Ever.
And in terms of institutions and law, you cannot underestimate. This is where my specialty comes in. The importance of the United States Constitution. Judges are letting us down every day.
Yep.
The state doesn't follow its own. These are old problems. We do have a constitutional order here that has been phenomenally successful for what in human history, certainly in modern history, counts as a fairly long time. It's a big, big difference. Also, federalism. There's a lot to be said for federalism. California ultimately cannot continue being California. Nothing that can go on, anything that can't go on forever won't.
Exactly. That's why that dichotomy between central government and the atomization of power is one of our best guarantees. The problems that you just mentioned about the administration of justice are the same problems that Oliver Wendell Holmes contended with, or James Bradley. I mean, if you think that every judge in America in the 1850s was an honest interpreter of the Constitution, I have a story to tell you. You know it's not true. It was never true. It's not true today. It wasn't true then. There's always going to be, there is a difference between a system where there are corrupt individuals and a corrupt system. In our system, we have corrupt individuals, but the system is not corrupt. As opposed to, say, Brazil, where it's a corrupt system where even an honest player cannot act.
And let's remember what happened in Brazil. The head of the Supreme Court basically tried to yank Elon Musk into court in front of him so that he could slap him around, or worse.
And Elon Musk said, "Let me adjust my glasses first."
And imagine it's Brazil.
And when Elon Musk,
who the hell do you think you are?
And when Elon Musk didn't go, and they put fines on Starlink on X, since Elon Musk took X out of the country, they collected from Starlink, a different company with different shareholders, even though Elon Musk is a principal in both. I mean, the whole thing. Now, where does Alexandre de Moraes come from? He's a mafioso from Sao Paulo who was a henchman for Lula in Sao Paulo. When Lula was arrested, when the car wash scandal broke out, Lula's successor, member of the band, put Alexander in the Supreme Court. And Alexander from the Supreme Court figured out a way to undo the sentence to Lula, free him, and allow him to run again. People say that Alexander de Moraes owns Brazil. No, his ass belongs to Lula. And he will do or say whatever he is told to do or say.
This guy knows what he's talking about.
So, and if you want to do business in Brazil, you have three choices. One, don't. Take a big suitcase of non-sequential bills to buy favor in Brazil. Or three, get some Vaseline. You're going to need it because they're going to shove it up your you know what violently. Those are the only three ways. There is no state of law in Brazil. There is no democracy. There is no nothing. There is whatever comes out of the gonads of the great kahuna. And the great kahuna is this once commie bastard. Today he's more like El Padrino. I remember Lula in when I was in Brazil. You know that he was the cheapest means of reducing expenses during a downturn in Sao Paulo?
What do you mean?
Well, a friend of mine who was the general manager of Volkswagen do Brasil at the time explained the game to me. You know, the labor laws in Brazil are very strict. You cannot fire anybody. You cannot suspend anybody. You cannot lay off anybody. Period. End of story. Goodbye. So you have a recession. You're not selling cars. You don't need to manufacture cars. What the hell do you do?
You have to kill them.
Call Lula. So you call Lula, the Secretary General of this Auto Workers Union in the ABC in Sao Paulo. You give him 50 grand under the table, and he calls a wildcat strike. And they have their strike. And you have your factory stop. You're not increasing the inventory. You're doing fine. When everything is cool and we have to go back to work, you go wink, wink, and you go back to work. And then the government declares the strike illegal. And you don't have to pay anybody. Isn't that lovely? So Volkswagen controls expenses. Lula enriches himself. Those are the labor leaders with Lamborghinis and houses on the beach. And then the poor imbeciles who give part of their salary to this idiot every month to protect their interests. Yeah, sure. Tomorrow morning. And that's how Lula was made. I met him once. I went out of curiosity to the return of Carlos Prestes. Carlos Prestes was a communist leader who had led a column of communist revolutionaries. He was going to do the revolution in Brazil. So he took all of his revolutionaries with him and went to the middle of fucking Mato Grosso. What are you going to do, the revolution with the monkeys? And he spent months marching up and down from Argentina to the Caribbean in the jungle until everybody was either dead or dying. And then he surrendered. He received an amnesty, was sent into exile, and in 1979, he returned to Brazil. And I wanted to see this shit, so I went over there, and there was Lula kissing his ass. The return of the Great Revolution. The Great Revolutionary was a freaking moron. Who conquered, I don't know, malaria. There are no ideologies in the South. Everything is like Macondo. Remember Macondo, 100 Years of Solitude?
100 years. No, he didn't write 100 Years of
No, no,
Solitude.
no. Macondo is the name of the town in the Hundred
Oh,
Years of Solitude.
yeah, I read it in high school. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, Macondo is South America. South America is 100 Years of Solitude.
Right, that was the metaphor. That was the metaphor.
It's not an ideological question anymore. This guy has one ideology, and it happens to coincide with our currency.
He has negotiable virtue.
Oh, you bet. Just like Biden. Biden has only one religion. 100,000 in the fund for the grandkids, and you're in. And you know that's the way. If anything, and he's not the first one in the U.S. We've had ours quite a long series of corrupt. The problem is that without social media, without instant communication, with news traveling from one side of the country to the other in 3 or 4 weeks, these things were unknown. And I would bet you that for the majority of American citizens outside of big cities, it remains unknown. We're getting closer to your deadline, so in support of what you said a little while ago, America's insurance policy is the population between the Delaware River and the Sierra Nevada. These
That's
people don't give a rat's ass what people are doing in the West Village. They could care less who shits where in San Francisco. They work, they get up in the morning, they work in their farms or their businesses in their small towns. They go hunting with their friends on weekend, and they don't give a shit who's this week's drug lord in Miami. And they don't care much about politics either. They just live their lives. And as long as they can live their lives in relative freedom, they don't give a crap. Somebody in Spain was asking me, about all the trouble we have. Somebody with a 40 IQ as a candidate for president to be the first moron. No, we've already had him. The first stupid moron, if she's elected, together with what is probably the most clownish type ever to be presented as a candidate for vice president. And nobody gives a shit. Because their only contact with the federal government is once a year when they tell the federal government how much they are going to pay in taxes, with almost zero possibility of anybody taking a look at it. We still live in an honor system. And until the rising tide of shit reaches the second step of their Porsches, they're not going to give a crap. And that could be 200 years from now, for all I know. When people say, if things go south in America, where would you go? West Texas? Montana? I'll probably stay where I am, Southside Virginia, which is as far away from the Beltway as you can possibly get.
and still be in Virginia.
No. It's so different. It's a different world. It's like another universe. I'll send you on WhatsApp what my wife sent me while we were waiting for the beginning of this show, and you're gonna say, is that today? It could have been 1860. It's a completely different universe. And as long as we have those universes to take refuge within America, I don't see a better place in the world. Have you taken a look at Europe? I mean, really? I love to visit. I love Italy. I love Spain. I despise France with a passion. Eh,
So that's an opinion on everything.
yeah, of course I do. I was once paid for having opinions. It's become a professional uh, malformation. But the thing is, you take a look at their politics. The only reason I love Spain is because I don't have to worry about the local politics. Because if I did, I'd be chewing thumbs all day. It makes New York look like the Eden of capitalism. Anyway, let me finish with one thing before we go, because we started talking about Hezbollah and the beep, beep, beep. Decades from now, they will be studying in war colleges around the world what Israel did this week. And I have news for the bad guys. There's many more where this came from. If you think I was joking when I was talking about the bidets exploding, I wasn't. So far, we've had beepers, walkie-talkies, access systems with biometrics, and it hasn't even started yet. It's not safe to be a terrorist in the Middle East today. This is not something that Israel cooked up in a couple of hours. This is something that has been going on for years. The beepers that Hezbollah used.
They set up that company years ago.
Years ago, they didn't intervene, because I was thinking, imagine the logistics of intervening in the supply chain so they could change. They didn't. They manufactured the damn things. They created the company that obtained the license to manufacture the thing and managed to sell it to these morons. And then just waited for the right time. There's way more than this. The terrorists in Hezbollah will be afraid to press a button on an elevator. They're back in the 1700s, which is where their ideology and
Yeah, they should be. They should be perfectly comfortable there.
Right? That's what they wanted anyway. So screw it. They can go over there and ship all they want. Probably the only activity they can do without risk. Cars, they all have chips, baby. Anything that can be hacked, anything that can be twitched, it probably has been.
Also, they can't trust anyone.
No.
But everyone in your country is dirt poor and inbred stupid. Your ability to buy loyalty from such people, notwithstanding the clans, the closeness of the families, that's over.
Yep.
They're compromised. They have no idea. Somebody let the Israelis into that hotel, into that IRCG hotel where that gangster was staying.
Yes.
They didn't break in there in the middle of the night.
Mm-mm.
They can't trust anyone.
And somebody told them ahead of time where he was going to be.
Good times.
I mean, their intelligence is amazing. I wouldn't be surprised if Nasrallah's wife is the one spilling the beans, because there are people very close to Nasrallah who are spilling the beans. And they're going to be looking over their shoulder and making sure they don't carry anything electronic for a long time. But there's more.
There's more. We're going over time, but there's more.
Okay. I'll give you, because when you go to have a CAT scan or something that they inject you with a barium solution.
Yes.
The purpose of which is to make your organs visible, because otherwise they can't see shit. Israel just gave
Yeah,
Hezbollah an enema of barium,
that's right. Absolutely.
because all of the operatives, all of the people associated with Hezbollah had to go to a hospital, showed up on social media, and all of them are being studied and their social relations mapped.
But also, they've been using these Israeli beepers. They know who was calling whom.
No, Israel has a phone book of Hezbollah better than Nasrallah's. The intelligence school is amazing. And by the way, you can use barium enema all you want. I'll share the copyright with you.
Thank you
It,
very much. I think I'll avoid using a barium enema, but I might get one if I don't log off soon, because I told Jane that I would be home to help to prepare for Shabbos in a reasonable amount of time. So we're going to sign off for tonight. Thank you for joining us.
I hope she's baking challah.
She is.
Mm.
She bakes delicious challah. She
Hey,
also writes fantastic articles about legal affairs for legal insurrection.
I read a couple. They're very, very good. By the way, you know what my mother asked me to send a message to the Hezbollah people who might be watching.
I get a lot of that.
Look at me. This is from my mother. Gay kaken. I'll do it again. Gay kaken. There you go. You know what it is.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
We'll find out. Take care. Good night, and thank you.